Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna and welcome to ISKCON Dublin to today's reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. We're continuing today with verse 6 of the 9th chapter. And as always, we will read the Mahima Stotra of Sanatana Goswami. If I can find it. Hold on. Sarva Shastra Viyusha, Sarva Vidaika Satpala, Sarva Siddhantna Nadya, Sarva. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths. You are the only gift to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu, Kalidvanto Ditaditya, Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam. You are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Shri Krishna. Paramananda Patnaya Prema Vakshaksharayate Sarvanda Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishna Namostume. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. Madhika Bandha Matsangi Madguru Matmahadana Mandishkaragama Bhagya Madananda Namostate. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great help, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadutadayi nati nichochataraka anamuncha kadachimam premnahrit kantayos puram. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna everyone, welcome again to ISKCON Dublin on our Facebook and on YouTube page. Everyone else present. We're continuing with the 6th verse. And just before I start, we will try to finish. We have 35 verses left in this canto. and as we don't have a session tomorrow, as we are starting a seminar with Tama and Partha Prabhus from Canada, we will try to extend a little bit or try to speed up a little bit to be able to finish these cantos. Not much, only 108 pages, small pages, like this on this pad. Okay, let's go. Translation. The river Ganges, by which the king set to fast, carries the most auspicious water, which is mixed with the dust of the lotus feet of the Lord and tulasi leaves. Therefore that water sanctifies the three worlds inside and outside, and even sanctifies Lord Shiva and other demigods. Consequently, everyone who is destined to die must take shelter of this river. Purport. Maharaj Parikshit, just after receiving the news of his death within 7 days, at once retired from family life and shifted himself to the sacred bank of the Yamuna river. Generally it is said that the king took shelter on the banks of the Ganges, but according to Srila Jiva Goswami, the king took shelter on the bank of the Yamuna. Srila Jiva Goswami's statement appears to be more accurate because of the geographical situation. Maharaj Parikshit resided in his capital Hastinapura, situated near present Delhi, and the river Yamuna flows down past the city. Naturally, the king would take shelter of the river Yamuna because she was flowing past his palace door. And as far as sanctity is concerned, the river Yamuna is more directly connected with Lord Krishna than the Ganges. The Lord sanctified the river Yamuna from the beginning of his transcendental pastimes in the world. While his father Vasudeva was crossing the Yamuna with the baby Lord Krishna for a safe place at Gokula, on the other bank of the river from Mathura, the Lord fell down in the river, and by the dust of his lotus feet, the river at once became sanctified. It is especially mentioned herein that Maharaj Parikshit took shelter of that particular river, which is beautifully flowing, carrying the dust of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, mixed with tulasi leaves. Lord Krishna's lotus feet are always besmeared with the tulasi leaves, and thus as soon as his lotus feet contact the water of the Ganges and the Yamuna, the rivers become at once sanctified. The Lord, however, contacted the river Yamuna more than the Ganges. According to the Varaha Purana, as quoted by Srila Jiva Goswami, There is no difference between the waters of the Ganges and the Yamuna, but when the water of the Ganges is sanctified 100 times, it is called the Yamuna. Similarly, it is said in the scriptures that 1000 names of Vishnu are equal to one name of Rama, and 3 names of Lord Rama are equal to one name of Krishna. Text 7. Thus the king, the worldly descendant of the Pandavas, decided once and for all, and sat on the Ganges bank to fast until death and give himself up to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, who alone is able to award liberation. So, freeing himself from all kinds of associations and attachments, he accepted the vows of a sage. Purport. The water of the Ganges sanctifies all the 3 worlds, including the gods and the demigods, because it emanates from the lotus feet of the personality of God, Vishnu. Lord Krishna is the fountainhead of the principle of Vishnu Tattva, and therefore shelter of his lotus feet can deliver one from all sins, including an offense committed by a king unto a Brahmana. Maharaj Parikshit therefore decided to meditate upon the lotus feet of Lord Shri Krishna, who is Mukunda, or the giver of liberation of all. The banks of the Ganges or the Yamuna give one a chance to remember the Lord continuously. Maharaj Parikshit freed himself from all material association and meditated upon the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, and that is the way of liberation. To be free from all material association means to cease completely from committing any further sins. To meditate upon the lotus feet of the Lord means to become free from the effects of all previous. The conditions of the material are so made that one has to commit sins willingly or unwillingly, and the best example is Maharaj Parikshit himself, who was a recognized sinless pious king. But he also became a victim of an offense, even though he was ever unwilling to commit such a mistake. He was cursed also, but because he was a great devotee of the Lord, even such reverses of life became favorable. The principle is that one should not willingly commit any sin in his life and should constantly remember the lotus feet of the Lord without deviation. Only in such a mood will the Lord help the devotee make regular progress toward the path of liberation, and thus attain the lotus feet of the Lord. Even if there are accidental sins committed by the devotee, the Lord saves the surrendered soul from all sins, as confirmed in all scriptures. There's a verse from Bhagavatam 11:5-42. Sapadam mulam bhajatam priyasya yaktan abhavasya harim pareshaha ikarma yat chotpatitam katanchit dunoti saram pridisani vishnaha. Text number 8. It's the 19th chapter, and the text is 8.
Okay.
A little further, I guess.
19.
19.
Yeah.
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 The chapter is called The Appearance of Shukadeva Goswami.
Yeah. Text number 3.
8.
8. Yep.
Translation. At that time, all the great minds and thinkers, accompanied by their disciples, and sages who could verily sanctify a place of pilgrimage just by their presence, arrived there on the plea of making a pilgrimage journey. Purport. When Maharaj Parikshit sat down on the bank of the Ganges, the news spread in all directions of the universe, and the great-minded sages, who could follow the importance of the occasion, all arrived there on the plea of pilgrimage. Actually, they came to meet Maharaj Parikshit and not to take a pilgrimage, because all of them were competent enough to sanctify the places of pilgrimage. Common men go to pilgrimage sites themselves purified of all sins. Thus, the places of pilgrimage become overburdened with the sins of others. But when such sages visit overburdened places of pilgrimage, they sanctify the places by their presence. Therefore, the sages who came to meet Maharaj Parikshit were not very much interested in getting us purified like common men, but on the plea of taking a bath in that day, they came to Maharaj Parikshit because they could foresee that Srimad Bhagavatam by Shukadeva Goswami. All of them wanted to take advantage of the great occasion. Text 9 and 10. From different parts of the universe, there arrived great sages like Atri, Chavana, Sharadvan, Ishtanemi, Brigu, Vashishta, Parashara, Vishwamitra, Angira, Parashuram, Uta, Indra Pramada, Mavahu, Medatiti, Devala, Arshtishena, Bharadvaj, Gautama, Ipalada, Maitreya, Aurva, Kumbayoni, Dvaipayana, and the great personality Narada. Purport. Chavana, a great sage and one of Bhrigu Muni. He was born prematurely when his pregnant mother was ignorant. Chavana is one of the sons of his father, Bhrigu. When Brahmaji was performing a great sacrifice of Varuna, Maharishi Bhrigu was born from the sacrificial fire. He was a great sage, and his very dear wife was Bhoma. He could travel in space like Durvasa, Narada, and others, and he used to visit all the planets of the universe. Before the battle of Kurukshetra, he tried to stop the battle. Sometimes he instructed Bharadvaj Muni about astronomical evolution, and he is the author of the great Brij Samhita, the great astrological calculation. He explained how air, fire, water from ether. He explained how the air in the stomach is the intestines. As a great philosopher, he logically established the eternity of the living entity in Earth. He was also a great anthropologist, and the theory of evolution was explained by him. He was a scientific propounder of the orders of human society, known as the Varnashram institution. He converted the Kshatriya king Vitaha into a Brahmana. Vashishta Srimad Bhagavatam. The description of Vashishta in we heard this maybe a month ago.
Yes, yeah.
Parashara. He is the grandson of Vashishta Muni and father of Vyasadeva. He is the son of Maharishi Shakti, and his mother's name was Adrishyati. He was in the womb of his mother when she was only 12 years old. And from within the womb of his mother he learned the Vedas. His father was killed by a demon, Kalmashapada, and to avenge this he wanted to annihilate the whole world. He was restrained, however, by his grandfather Vashishta. He then performed a Rakshasa killing yagya, but Maharishi Pulastya restrained him. He begot Vyasadeva, being attracted by Satyavati, who was to become the wife of Maharaj Shantanu. By the blessings of Parashara, Satyavati became pregnant for miles. He was present also during the time of Bhishma's death. He was spiritual master of Maharaj Janaka and a great devotee of Lord Shiva. He is the author of many Vedic scriptures and sociological directions. Gadi Sutta or Vishwamitra, a great sage of austerity and mystic power. He is famous as Gadi Sutta because his father was Gadi, a powerful king of the province of Kanyakubja, part of Uttara Pradesh. Though he was a Kshatriya by birth, he became a Brahmana in the very same body by the power of his spiritual achievements. He picked a quarrel with Vashishta Muni when he was a Kshatriya king by his cooperation with Maganga Muni, and thus was able to vanquish the sons of Vashishta. He became a great yogi, and yet he failed to check his senses, and thus was obliged to become the father of Shakuntala, the beauty queen of world history. Once, when he was a Kshatriya king, he visited the hermitage of Vashishta Muni, and he was given a royal reception. Vishwamitra from Vashishta a cow named Nandini, and the Muni refused to deliver it. Vishwamitra stole the cow, and thus there was a quarrel between the sage and the king. Vishwamitra was defeated by the spiritual strength of Vashishta, and thus the king decided to become a Brahmana. Before becoming a Brahmana, he underwent severe austerity on the bank of the Kaushika. He was also one who tried to stop the Kurukshetra war. Angira. He is one of the 6 mental sons of Brahma and the father of Brihaspati, the great learned priest of the demigods in the heavenly planets. He was born of the semen of Brahmaji, given to a cinder of fire. Uttatya and Samvarta are his sons. It is said that he is still performing austerity and chanting the holy name of the Lord at a place known as Alokananda on the banks of the Ganges. Parashuram, that was also explained in 196. Utatya, one of the three sons of Maharshi Angira. He was the spiritual master of Maharaj Mandata. He married Bhadra, the daughter of Soma Muni. Varuna kidnapped his wife Bhadra, and to retaliate the offense of the god of water, he drank all the water of the world. Just synopsis, just short synopsis. Medatiti, an old sage of yore, an assembly member of the heavenly king Indradev. His son was Kanva Muni, who brought up Shakuntala in the forest. He was promoted to the heavenly planet by strictly following the principles of retired life, Vanaprastha. Devala, a great authority like Narada Muni and Vyasadeva. His good name is on the list of authorities mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita when Arjuna acknowledged Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He met Maharaj Yudhishthira after the battle of Kurukshetra, and he was the elder brother of Daumya, the priest of the Pandava family. Like the Kshatriyas, he also allowed his daughter to select her own husband in a Swayamvara meeting, and at that ceremony all the bachelor sons of the rishis were invited. According to some, he is not Asita Deva. There is another Deva. Bharadvaj, same, already explained. Gautama, one of the 7 great sages of the universe. Sharadvan Gautama was one of his sons. Persons in the Gautama Gotra or dynasty today are either his family descendants or in his disciplic succession. The Brahmanas who profess Gautama Gotra are generally family descendants, and the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas who profess Gautama Gotra are all in the line of his disciplic succession. He was the husband of the famous Ahalya, who turned into stone when Indradeva, the king of the heaven, molested her. Ahalya was delivered by Lord Ramachandra. Gautama was the grandfather of Kripacharya, one of the heroes of the battle of Kurukshetra. Maitreya, a great rishi of yore. He was spiritual master of Vidura and a great religious authority. He advised Dhritarashtra to keep good relations with the Pandavas. Duryodhana disagreed and thus was cursed by him. He met Vyasadeva and had religious discourses with him. Text 11. There were also many other saintly demigods, kings, and special royal orders called Arunadayas, a special rank of Rajarishis, from different dynasties of sages. When they all assembled together to meet the emperor Parikshit, he received them properly and bowed his head to the ground. Purport. The system of bowing the head to the ground to show respect to superiors is an excellent etiquette which obliges the honored guest deep into the heart. Even the first great offender is excused simply by this process, and Maharaj Parikshit, although honored by all the rishis and kings, welcomed all the big men in that humble etiquette in order to be excused from any offenses. Generally, at the last stage of one's life, this humble method is adopted by every sensible man in order to be excused before departure. In this way, Maharaj Parikshit implored everyone's goodwill for going back home, back to Godhead. So just quickly, the scene is, he came, Parikshit Maharaj came to accept his death, imminent death in 7 days.
Yes.
We just heard yesterday and the day before. He was cursed by
King. By the Muni, Muni's son.
the Muni's son.
Yeah.
And he
Because
accepted
of
that curse.
putting the snake, dead snake.
Yeah, that's snake.
Yeah.
He was obviously, or apparently, he was apparently disturbed.
Yeah.
But he's a pure devotee, so it's explained by Acharya that he wasn't disturbed, but this was all plan of the Lord, this to happen. So now we are just going to how all the sages who heard what's going on, and Srimad Bhagavatam will come into existence by Shukadeva Goswami, who will about to appear any time now, who is the spiritual master
Mm.
of Parikshit. So we're going to clear the seats. 12. After all the rishis and others had seated themselves comfortably, the king, humbly standing before them with folded hands, told them of his decision to fast until death. Purport. Although the king had already decided to fast until death on the bank of the Ganges, he humbly expressed his decision to elicit the opinions of the great authorities present there. Any decision, however important, should be confirmed by some authority. That makes the matter perfect. This means that the monarchs who ruled the earth in those days were not irresponsible dictators. They scrupulously followed the authoritative decisions of the saints and sages in terms of Vedic injunction. Maharaj Parikshit, as a perfect king, followed the principles by consulting the authorities, even up to the last days of his life. 13.
They are the true rulers.
Yeah. They're showing they're not
They were the
even
true.
for a moment
Yes.
not following
Yeah.
the established rules and directions, codes of conduct, etc. 13. The fortunate king said, "Indeed, we are the most grateful of all the kings who are trained to get favors from the great souls. Generally, you, sages, consider royalty as refused, to be rejected, and left in a distant place." Purport. According to religious principles, stool, urine, wash, water, etc. must be left at a long distance. Attached bathrooms, urinals, etc. may be very convenient amenities of modern civilization, but they are ordered to be situated at a distance from residential quarters. That very example is cited herein in relation to the kingly order for those who are progressively marching back to Godhead. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that to be in intimate touch with dollars and cents men, or the kingly order, is worse than suicide for one who desires to go back to Godhead. In other words, the transcendentalists do not generally associate with men who are too enamored by the external beauty of God's creation. By advanced knowledge in spiritual realization, the transcendentalist knows that this beautiful material world is nothing but a shadowy reflection of the reality, the kingdom of God. They are not therefore very... Sorry, just switching off.
You have enough power, otherwise you can
Yeah,
use
there's
this.
enough power, just somehow it's switching
Yeah.
off.
I'll give you this one. Just continue.
I have more, right? Yeah, I have. It's fast. Technology. Yeah, you can only rely on books. This is it. I don't even know where we are. 13, huh? You know which sentence we are?
We are in, I'll tell you, dollars and cents men, or the kingly order.
We did this, yeah.
Yeah. It's worse than suicide.
In other words, the transcendentalists do not generally associate with men who are too enamored by the external beauty of God's creation. Right? By advanced knowledge in spiritual realization, the transcendentalist knows that this beautiful material world is nothing but a shadowy reflection of reality, the kingdom of God. They are not therefore very much captivated by royal opulence or anything like that. But in the case of Maharaj Parikshit, the situation was different. Apparently the king was condemned to death by an inexperienced Brahmana boy, but factually he was called by the Lord to return to him. Other transcendentalists, the great sages and mystics who assembled together because of Maharaj Parikshit's fasting unto death, were quite anxious to see him, for he was going back to Godhead. Maharaj Parikshit also could understand that the great sages who assembled there were all kind to his forefathers, the Pandavas, because of their devotional service to the Lord. He therefore felt grateful to the sages for being present there at the last stage of his life, and he felt that it was all due to the greatness of his late forefathers or grandfathers. He felt proud, therefore, that he happened to be the descendant of such great devotees. Such pride for the devotees of the Lord is certainly not equal to the puffed up sense of vanity for material prosperity. The first is reality, whereas the other is false and vain. 14. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the controller of both the transcendental and mundane world, has graciously overtaken me in the form of the Brahmana's curse. Due to my being too much attached to family life, the Lord, in order to save me, has appeared before me in such a way that only out of fear I will detach myself from the world. Purport. Maharaj Parikshit, although born in a family of great devotees, the Pandavas, and although securely trained in transcendental attachment to the association of the Lord, still found the allurement of mundane family life so strong that he had to be detached by a plan of the Lord. Such direct action is taken by the Lord in the case of a special devotee. Maharaj Parikshit could understand this by the presence of the topmost transcendentalist in the universe. The Lord resides with his devotees, and therefore the presence of the great saints indicated the presence of the Lord. The king therefore welcomed the presence of the great rishis as a mark of favor of the Supreme Lord. 15. O Brahmanas, just accept me as a completely surrendered soul, and let Mother Ganges, the representative of the Lord, also accept me in that way, for I have already taken the lotus feet of the Lord into my heart. Let the snake bird, or whatever magical thing the Brahmana created, bite me at once. I only desire that you all continue singing the deeds of Lord Vishnu. Purport. As soon as one is given up completely under the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, he is not at all afraid of death. The atmosphere created by the presence of great devotees of the Lord on the bank of the Ganges and Maharaj Parikshit's complete acceptance of the Lord's lotus feet were sufficient guarantee to the king for going back to Godhead. He thus became absolutely free from all fear of death. 16. Again, offering obeisances unto all you Brahmanas, I pray that if I should again take my birth in the material world, I will have complete attachment to the unlimited Lord Krishna, association with his devotees, and friendly relations with all living beings. Purport. That a devotee of the Lord is the only perfect living being is explained herein by Maharaj Parikshit. A devotee of the Lord is no one's enemy, although there may be many enemies of a devotee. A devotee of the Lord does not like to associate with non-devotees, although he has no enmity with them. He desires association with the devotees of the Lord. This is perfectly natural, because birds of the same feather mix together. And the most important function of a devotee is to have complete attachment for Lord Sri Krishna, the Father of all living beings. As a good son of the Father behaves in a friendly way with all his other brothers, so also the devotee of the Lord, being a good son of the Supreme Father, Lord Krishna, sees all other living beings in relation with the Supreme Father. He tries to bring back the upstart sons of the Father to a saner stage and to get them to accept the Supreme Fatherhood of God. Maharaj Parikshit was certainly going back to Godhead, but even if he were not to go back, he prayed for a pattern of life which is the most perfect way in the material world. A pure devotee does not desire the company of a personality of as great as Brahma, but he prefers the association of a petty living being, provided he is a devotee of the Lord. 17. In perfect self-control, Maharaj Parikshit sat down on a seat of straw, with straw roots facing the east, placed on the southern bank of the Ganges, and he himself faced the north. Just previously he had given charge of his kingdom over to his sons. Purport. The river Ganges is celebrated as the wife of the sea. The great seed of Kusha straw is considered to be sanctified if the straw is taken out of the earth complete with root, and if the root is pointed toward the east, it is considered to be auspicious. Facing the north is still more favorable for attaining spiritual success. Maharaj Parikshit handed over the charge of administration to his son before leaving home. He was thus fully equipped for all favorable conditions. 18. Thus the king, Maharaj Parikshit, set to fast until death. All the demigods of the higher planets praised the king's actions, and in pleasure continually scattered flowers of the earth and beat celestial drums. Purport. Even up to the time of Maharaj Parikshit, there were interplanetary communications, and the news of Maharaj Parikshit's fasting unto death to attain salvation reached the higher planets in the sky, where the intelligent demigods live. The demigods are more luxurious than human beings, but all of them are obedient to the orders of the Supreme Lord. There is no one in the heavenly planets who is an atheist or non-believer. Thus any devotee of the Lord on the surface of the earth is always praised by them, and in the case of Maharaj Parikshit, they were greatly delighted, and thus gave tokens of honor by scattering flowers over the earth and by beating celestial drums. A demigod takes pleasure in seeing someone go back to Godhead. He is always pleased with a devotee of the Lord, so much so that by his adidaivic powers he may help the devotees in all respects. And by their actions, the Lord is pleased with them. There is an invisible chain of complete cooperation with the Lord, between the Lord, the demigods, and the devotee of the Lord on earth. 19. All the great sages who were assembled there also praised the decision of Maharaj Parikshit, and they expressed their approval by saying, "Very good." Naturally, the sages are inclined to do good to common men, for they have all the qualitative powers of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, they were very much pleased to see Maharaj Parikshit a devotee of the Lord, and they spoke as follows. Purport. The natural beauty of a living being is enhanced by rising up to the platform of devotional service. Maharaj Parikshit was absorbed in attachment for Lord Krishna. Seeing this, the great sages assembled were very pleased, and they expressed their approval by saying, "Very good." Such sages are naturally inclined to do good to the common man, and when they see a personality like Maharaj Parikshit advance in devotional service, their pleasure knows no bounds, and they offer all blessings in their power. The devotional service of the Lord is so auspicious that all demigods and sages, up to the Lord himself, became pleased with the devotee, and therefore the devotee find everything auspicious. All inauspicious matters are removed from the path of a progressive devotee. Meeting all the great sages at the time of death was certainly auspicious for Maharaj Parikshit, and thus he was blessed by the so-called curse of a Brahmana's boy. 20. The sages said, "O chief of all the saintly kings of the Pandu dynasty, who are strictly in the line of Lord Sri Krishna, it is not at all astonishing that you give up your throne, which is decorated with the helmets of many kings, to achieve eternal association with the personality of Godhead." Purport. Foolish politicians who hold political administrative posts think that the temporary posts they occupy are the highest material gain of life, and therefore they stick to those posts even up to the last moment of life, without knowing that achievement of liberation as one of the associates of the Lord in his eternal abode is the highest gain of life. The human life is meant for achieving this end. The Lord has assured us in the Bhagavad Gita many times that going back to Godhead, his eternal abode, is the highest achievement. Prahlad Maharaj, while praying to Lord Nrsimha, said, "O my Lord, I am very much afraid of the materialistic way of life, and I am not the least afraid of your present ghastly, ferocious feature as Nrsimha did. This materialistic way of life is something like a grinding stone, and we are being crushed by it. We have fallen into this horrible whirlpool of the tossing waves of life, and thus, my Lord, I pray at your lotus feet to call me back to your eternal abode as one of your servitors. This is the summit liberation of this materialistic way of life. I have very bitter experience of the materialistic way of life. In whichever species of life I have taken birth, compelled by the force of my own activities, I have very painfully experienced two things, namely separation from my beloved and meeting with what is not wanted. And to counteract them, The remedies which I undertook were more dangerous than the disease itself. So drift from one point to another, birth after birth, and I pray to you, therefore, to give me a shelter at your lotus feet. End quote. The Pandava kings, who are more than many saints of the world, knew the bitter results of the materialistic way of life. They were never captivated by the glare of the imperial throne they occupied, and they sought always the opportunity of being called by the Lord to associate with Him eternally. Maharaj Parikshit was the worldly grandson of Maharaj Yudhishthira. Maharaj Yudhishthira gave up the imperial throne to his grandson, and similarly Maharaj Parikshit, the grandson of Maharaj Yudhishthira, gave up the imperial throne to his son Janamejaya. That is the way of all the kings in the dynasty, because they are all strictly in the line of Lord Krishna. Thus the devotees of the Lord are never enchanted by the glare of materialistic life, and they live impartially, unattached to the objects of the false, illusory, materialistic life of life. Materialistic way of life. Text 21. We shall all wait here until the foremost devotee of the Lord, Maharaj Parikshit, returns to the Supreme Planet, which is completely free from all mundane contamination and all kinds of lamentation.
Right. Mundane is a foolish thing, right?
Mundane is worldly.
Worthy. No,
Worldly.
Worldly.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a foolish thing as well.
Yeah, you can say. You can say. It relates to foolish activities in one sense, but it's not. It doesn't mean directly that.
Indirectly.
Indirectly, yeah, you can say. Because the thing in Latin, mundus means world.
Yeah.
Mundus is the name of the earth, the world.
Yeah, actually, in my mother tongue, mundus means full.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. Hey, mundo. Right?
Hey, mundo.
Mundo. Well,
That means a body without head.
Yeah. A mundo is a body. I'll leave you with the book. This is kind of like switching off.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
It's purport of 21.
21 purport.
You have 19 verses.
Ooh.
If you think you can make it?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
I mean, I can do it. Like I said, 5, 10 minutes extra.
Like that's the amount.
One purport?
No. This is the end.
Ah, right. Okay.
Oh, let's see on less. Here it is. Perfect.
Okay.
Okay,
Hare Krishna. Jai. Okay. So, purport. Beyond the limitation of the material creation, which is compared to the cloud in the sky, there is the Paravyoma, or the spiritual sky, full of planets called Vaikuntha. Why don't we have sound? Why didn't he do speaker?
Oh yeah.
Such Vaikuntha planets are also differently known as Purushottamaloka, Achyutaloka, Vikramaloka, Rishikeshaloka, Keshaloka, Anirudaloka, Madhavaloka, Pradyumnaloka, Sankarshanaloka, Sridharaloka, Vasudevaloka, Ayodhyaloka, Paragaloka, and many other millions of spiritual lokas wherein the personality of God predominates. All the living entities there are liberated souls with spiritual bodies as good as the Lord, as good as that of the Lord. There is no material contamination. Everything there is spiritual, and therefore there is nothing objectively lamentable. They are full of transcendental bliss and are up birth, death, old age, and disease. And amongst all the above mentioned Vaikuntha lokas, there is one supreme loka called Goloka Vrindavana, which is the abode of the Lord Sri Krishna and his specific associates. Maharaj Parikshit was destined to achieve this particular loka, and the great rishis assembled there could foresee this. All of them consulted among themselves about the great departure of the great king, and they wanted to see him up to the last moment because they would no more be able to see such a great devotee of the Lord. When a great devotee of the Lord passes away, there is nothing to be lamented, because the devotee is destined to enter into the kingdom of God. But the sorry plight is that such great devotees leave our sight, and therefore there is every reason to be sorry. As the Lord is rarely to be seen by our present eyes, so also are the great devotees. The great rishis therefore correctly decided to remain on the spot till the last moment.
Could I ask this phrase? But the sorry plight is that such great devotees leave our sight, and therefore there is every reason to be sorry. What does it imply?
Well, it's implying that, you shouldn't be, on one hand it's saying that you shouldn't be sad that this great devotee is leaving the world because he's going back to Krishna, right? But at the same time, we should be sorry that he is leaving because, he's such an exalted devotee. We should have his association as much as possible.
Yes.
So, it's kind of like twofold.
Yes.
On the one hand, happy that he's leaving, but okay, we're not going to see him now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the plight. Translation. All that was spoken by the great sages was very sweet to hear, full of meaning and appropriately presented as perfectly true. So after hearing them, Maharaj Parikshit, desiring to hear the activities of Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, congratulated the great sages. 23. The king said, O great sages, you have all very kindly assembled here, having come from all parts of the universe. You are all as good as supreme knowledge personified, resides in the planet above the three worlds, Satyaloka. Consequently, you are naturally inclined to do good to others, and but for this you have no interest, either in this life or in the next. Purport. 6 kinds of opulences, namely wealth, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation, are all originally the different attributes pertaining to the absolute personality of Godhead. Living beings, who are part and parcel entities of the Supreme Being, have all these attributes partially, up to the full strength of 78%. In the material world, these attributes, up to 78% of the Lord's attributes, are covered by the material energy, as the sun is covered by a cloud. The covered strength of the sun is very dim compared to the original glare, and similarly, the original colour of the living beings with such attributes become almost extinct. There are 3 planetary systems, namely the lower worlds, the intermediate worlds, and the upper worlds. The human beings on earth are situated at the beginning of the intermediate worlds. But living beings like Brahma and his contemporaries live in the upper worlds, of which the topmost is Satyaloka. In Satyaloka, the inhabitants are fully cognizant of Vedic wisdom, and thus the mystic cloud of material energy is cleared. Therefore, they are known as the Vedas personified. Such persons, being fully aware of knowledge, both mundane and transcendental, have no interest in either the mundane or transcendental worlds. They are practically desireless devotees. In the mundane world, they have no and in the transcendental world, they are full of themselves. And why do they come to the mundane world? They descend on different planets as messiahs by their own Lord to deliver the fallen souls. And they have to say, reclaim the fallen souls rotting in material existence, deluded by material energy. O trustworthy Brahmins, I now ask you about my immediate duty. Please, after proper deliberation, tell me of the unholy duty of everyone in all circumstances, and specifically of those about to die. Purport. In this verse, the king must place 2 questions before the learned sages. The first question is, what is the duty of everyone in all circumstances? And the second question is, what is the specific duty of one who died very shortly? The question relating is most important. Place these 2 questions before Shukdev Goswami also on his arrival. Practically the whole of the Srimad Bhagavatam beginning from the second canto up to the last 12th canto, deals with these two questions. The conclusion arrived at, therefore, is that devotional service of Lord Sri Krishna, as it is confirmed by the Lord himself in the last phase of the Bhagavad Gita, is the last word in relation to everyone's permanent duty in life. Maharaj Parikshit was already aware of this fact, but he wanted the great sages assembled there to unanimously give their verdict on his conviction, so that he might be able to go on with his confirmed duty without controversy. He has especially mentioned that the Shuddha are perfectly correct. For transcendental realization, self-realization, many processes by various classes of customers. Some of them are first-class methods or third-class methods. The first-class method, the man one give up all other methods and surrender to the lotus feet of the Lord, and thus be saved from all sins and their reactions. 25. Translation. At that moment there appeared the son of Vyasadeva, who travelled over the earth, disinterested and satisfied within himself. He did not manifest any symptoms of belonging to any social order or status of life. He was surrounded with women and children, and he dressed as if others had neglected him. Purport of Srila Prabhupada. The word Bhagavan is sometimes used in relation with some of the great devotees of the Lord, like Shukdev Goswami. Such liberated souls are disinterested in the affairs of this material world because they are self-satisfied by the great achievements of devotional service. As explained before, Shukdev Goswami never accepted any formal spiritual master, nor did he undergo any formal reformatory performances. His father, Vyasadeva, was his natural spiritual master because Shukdev Goswami heard Srimad Bhagavatam from him. After this, he became completely self-satisfied. Thus, he was not dependent on any formal process. The formal processes are necessary for those who are expected to reach the stage of complete liberation. But Sri Shukdev Goswami was already in that status by the grace of his father. As a young boy, he was expected to be properly dressed, but he went about naked and was uninterested in social customs. He was neglected by the general populace, and inquisitive boys and women surrounded him as if he were a madman. He thus appears on the scene while travelling on the earth of his own accord. It appears that upon the inquiry of Maharaj Parikshit, the great sages were not unanimous in their decision as to what was to be done. For spiritual salvation, there were many prescriptions according to the different modes of different persons. But the ultimate aim of life is to attain the highest perfectional stage of devotional service to the Lord. As doctors differ, so also sages differ in their different prescriptions. While such things were going on, the great and powerful son of Vyasadeva appeared on the scene. 26. Thighs, arms, shoulders, forehead, and the other parts of his body were all delicately performed. His eyes were beautifully wide, and his nose and ears were highly raised. He had a very attractive face, and his neck was well formed and beautiful like a conch shell. Beginning with the legs, and this system is observed here with Shukdev Goswami. He was only 16 years of age. A person can be older by experience and not by age. Sri Shukdev is described here of Vyasadeva, which is present there, although he is old. His collarbone was his navel was deep and his abdomen was striped. His arms were long and curly hair was strewn over his face. Naked and the hue of his body reflected Lord Krishna. Purport. Features indicate him to be different with the body features of Shukdev Goswami. Symptoms typical of great personalities, according to physiognomical body hue resembled that of Lord Krishna, who is the supreme among the gods, all living beings. 28. He was black and very beautiful due to his youth. Because of the glamour of his body and his attractive smile, he was pleasing to women. Though he tried to cover his natural glories, great sages present there were all expert in the art of physiognomy, and so they honoured him by rising from their seats. 29. Maharaj Parikshit, who is also known as Vishnu, one who is always protected by Vishnu, bowed his head to receive the chief guest, Shukdev Goswami. At that time, all the ignorant women and boys ceased following Srila Shukdev. Receiving respect from all, Shukdev Goswami took his exalted seat. Poor Srila Prabhupada. On Shukdev Goswami's arrival at the meeting, everyone except Srila Vyasadeva, Narada and a few others stood up, and Maharaj Parikshit, who was glad to receive a great devotee of the Lord, bowed down before him with all the limbs of his body. Shukdev Goswami also exchanged the greetings of reception by embrace, shaking of hands, nodding and bowing down, especially before his father and Narad Muni, because he was offered the presidential seat at the meeting. When he was so received by the king and sages, the street boys and less intelligent women who followed him were struck with wonder and fear. So they retired from their frivolous activities, and everything was full of gravity and calm.
What is frivolous activities? Frivolous activities.
Frivolous would be kind of, how do you put it?
Unwanted activities? Not satisfying?
Well, not proper behaviour,
not
you
proper.
might say, Text number 30. Shukdev Goswami was then surrounded by saintly sages and demigods, just as the moon is surrounded by stars, planets, and other heavenly bodies. His presence was gorgeous, and he was respected by all. In the great assembly of saintly personalities, there was Vyasadeva the Brahmarshi, Narad the Varshi, Parashuram the great ruler of the Kshatriya kings, etc. Some of them were powerful incarnations of the Lord. Shukdev Goswami was not known as Brahmarshi, Vajarsi, or Devarshi, nor was he an incarnation like Narad, Vyas, or Parashuram. And yet, he excelled them in respects paid. This means that the devotee of the Lord is more honoured in the world than the Lord himself. One should therefore never minimize the importance of a devotee like Shukdev Goswami. 31. The sage Sri Shukdev Goswami was perfectly pacified, intelligent, and ready to answer any question without hesitation. The great devotee Maharaj Parikshit approached him, offered him his respects by bowing before him, and politely inquired with sweet words and folded hands. Purport. The gesture now adopted by Maharaj Parikshit is questioning a master is quite befitting in terms of scriptural injunctions. The scriptural injunction is that one should humbly approach a spiritual master to understand the transcendental science. Maharaj Parikshit was now prepared for meeting his death, and within the very short time of 7 days, he was to know the process of entering the kingdom of God. In such important cases, one is required to approach a spiritual master. There is no necessity of approaching a spiritual master unless one is in need of solving the problems of life. One who does not know how to put questions before the spiritual master has no business seeing him, and the qualification of the spiritual master is perfectly manifested in the person of Shukdev Goswami. Both the spiritual master and the disciple, namely Sri Shukdev Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit, attained perfection through the medium of Srimad Bhagavatam. Shukdev Goswami learned Srimad Bhagavatam from his father, Vyasadeva, but he had no chance to recite it. Before Maharaj Parikshit, he recited Srimad Bhagavatam and answered the questions of Maharaj Parikshit unhesitatingly, and thus both the master and the disciple got salvation. Text number 32. The fortunate King Parikshit said, O Brahman, by your mercy only, you have sanctified us, making us like unto places of pilgrimage, all by your presence here as my guest. By your mercy, we, who have unworthy royalty, become eligible to serve the devotee. Poor Srila Prabhupada. Saintly devotees like Shukdev Goswami generally do not approach worldly enjoyers, especially those in royal orders. Maharaj Prataparudra was a follower of Lord Chaitanya, but when he wanted to see the Lord refused to see him because he was a king. For a devotee who desires to go back to Godhead, two things are strictly prohibited: worldly enjoyers and women. Therefore, devotees of the standard of Shukdev Goswami are never interested in seeing kings. Maharaj Parikshit was, of course, a different case. He was a great devotee, although a king, and therefore Shukdev Goswami came to see him in his last stage of life. Maharaj Parikshit, at his devotional humility, felt himself an unworthy descendant of his great Kshatriya forefathers, although he was as great as his predecessors. The unworthy sons of the royal orders are called Kshatriya Bandhavas, as the unworthy sons of the Brahmins are called Dvija Bandhus or Brahma Bandhus. Maharaj Parikshit was greatly encouraged by the presence of Shukdev Goswami. He felt himself sanctified by the presence of the great saint, whose presence turns any place into a place of pilgrimage. Text 33. Simply by our remembering you, our houses become instantly sanctified. I want to speak of seeing you, touching you, washing your holy feet, and offering you a seat in our home.
Sanctified is like purified.
The importance of holy places of pilgrimage is due to the presence of great sages and saints. It is said that simple persons go to the holy places and leave their sins there to accumulate. But the presence of the great saints disinfects the accumulated sins, and thus the holy places continue to remain sanctified by the grace of the devotees and saints present there. If such saints appear in the homes of worldly people, certainly the accumulated sins of such worldly enjoyers become neutralized. Therefore, the holy saints actually have no self-interest with the householders. The only aim of such saints is to sanctify the houses of the householders, and the householders therefore should feel grateful when such saints and sages appear at their doors. A householder who dishonours such holy orders is a great offender. It is enjoined, therefore, that a householder who does not bow down before a saint at once must undergo fasting for the day in order to neutralize the great offence. Number 34. Just as the atheists cannot remain in the presence of the personality of Godhead, so also the invulnerable sins of a man are immediately vanquished in your presence, O saint, O great mystic. Poor Srila Prabhupada. There are two classes of human beings, namely the atheist and the devotee of the Lord. The devotee of the Lord, because of manifesting godly qualities, is called a demigod, whereas the atheist is called a demon. The demon cannot stand the presence of Vishnu, the personality of Godhead. The demons are always busy in trying to vanquish the personality of Godhead. But factually, as soon as the personality of Godhead appears, by either his transcendental name, form, attributes, pastimes, paraphernalia, or variegatedness, the demon is at once vanquished. It is said that a ghost cannot remain as soon as the holy name of the Lord is chanted. The great saints and devotees of the Lord are in the list of his paraphernalia, and thus as soon as the saintly devotee is present, the ghostly sins are at once vanquished. That is the verdict of all Vedic literatures. One is recommended, therefore, to associate only with saintly devotees, so that worldly demons and ghosts cannot exert their sinister influence. Text number 25. Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is very dear to the sons of King Pandu, has accepted me as one of those relatives, just to please his great cousins and brothers. Purport, Srila Prabhupada. A pure and exclusive devotee of the Lord serves his family interest more dexterously than others who are attached to illusory family affairs. Generally, people are attached to family matters, and the whole economic impetus of human society is moving under the influence of family affection. Such deluded persons have no information that one can render better service to the family by becoming a devotee of the Lord. The Lord gives special protection to the family members and descendants of a devotee, even though such members are themselves non-devotees. Maharaj Prahlad was a great devotee of the Lord, but his father, Hiranyakashipu, was a great atheist and declared enemy of the Lord. But despite all this, Hiranyakashipu was awarded salvation due to his being the father of Maharaj Prahlad. The Lord is so kind that he gives all protection to the family members of his devotee, and thus the devotee has no need to bother about his family members, even if one leaves such family members aside to discharge devotional service. Maharaj Yudhishthira and his brothers were the sons of Kunti, the paternal aunt of Lord Krishna, and Maharaj Parikshit admits the patronage of Lord Krishna because of his being the only grandson of the great Pandavas. Text 36. Otherwise, without being inspired by Lord Krishna, how is it that you have voluntarily appeared here, though you are moving incognito to the common man, and are not visible to us who are on the verge of death? Purport, Srila Prabhupada. The great sage Shukdev Goswami was certainly inspired by Lord Krishna to appear voluntarily before Maharaj Parikshit, the great devotee of the Lord, just to give him the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. One can achieve the nucleus of devotional service by the Lord by the mercy of the spiritual master and the personality of Godhead. The spiritual master is the manifested representative of the Lord to help one achieve ultimate success. One who is not authorized by the Lord cannot become a spiritual master. Srila Shukdev Goswami is an authorized spiritual master, and thus he was inspired by the Lord to appear before Maharaj Parikshit and instruct him in the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. One can achieve the ultimate success of going back to Godhead if he is favoured by the Lord sending his true representative. As soon as a true representative of the Lord is met by a devotee of the Lord, the devotee is assured a guarantee for going back to Godhead, just after leaving the present body. This, however, depends on the sincerity of the devotee himself. The Lord is seated in the heart of all living beings, and thus he knows very well the movements of all individual persons. As soon as the Lord finds that a particular soul is very eager to go back to Godhead, the Lord at once sends his bona fide representative. The sincere devotee is thus assured by the Lord by going back to Godhead. The conclusion is that to get the assistance and help of a bona fide spiritual master means to receive the direct help of the Lord himself. Text number 37. You are the spiritual master of great saints and devotees, and I am therefore begging you to show the way of perfection for all persons, and especially for one who is about to die. Purport, Srila Prabhupada. Unless one is perfectly anxious to inquire about the way of perfection, there is no necessity of approaching a spiritual master. A spiritual master is not a kind of decoration for a householder. Generally, a fashionable materialist engages a so-called spiritual master without any profit. The pseudo-spiritual master flatters the so-called disciple, and thereby both the master and his ward go to hell without a doubt. Maharaj Parikshit is the right type of disciple because he puts forward questions vital to the interest of all men, particularly for the dying man. This question put forward by Maharaj Parikshit is the basic principle of the complete thesis of Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, Never see how intelligently the great master replies. Text number 38. Please let me know what a man should hear, chant, remember and worship, and also what he should not do. Please explain all this to me. Text number 39. O powerful Brahmin, it is said that you hardly stay in the houses of men long enough to milk a cow. Saints and sages in this renounced order of life go to the houses of their householders at the time they milk the cows early in the morning and ask some quantity of milk for subsistence. A pound of milk fresh from the milk bag of a cow is sufficient to feed an adult with all the vitamin values, and therefore saints and sages live only on milk. Even the poorest of the householders keep at least 10 cows, each delivering 12 to 20 quarts of milk. And therefore no one hesitates to spare a few pounds of milk for the mendicants. It is the duty of the householders to maintain the saints and sages like the children. So a saint like Shukdev Goswami would hardly stay at the house of a householder for more than 5 minutes in the morning. In other words, such saints are very rarely seen in the houses of householders. And Maharaj Parikshit therefore prayed to him to instruct him as soon as possible. The householders also should be intelligent enough to get some transcendental information from visiting sages. The householder should not foolishly ask a saint to deliver what is available in the market. That should be the reciprocal relation between the saints and the householders. And last but not least, text number 40. Translation. Sri Sutta Goswami said, the king thus spoke and questioned the sage using sweet language. Then the great and powerful personality, the son of Vyasadeva, who knew the principles of religion, began his reply. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, 19th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam.
It stopped. Yeah, so what is that?
They're like the sages and like people like the six Goswamis, you know, they didn't have a house where they lived, they didn't have, you know, they didn't have their own food or money or anything, they just lived off the householders, just went and begged.
Yeah.
So they went around and begged for their subsistence. And
so they are called mendicants.
Yeah, they get called mendicants. Yeah. They had no worldly possessions or you know, things. They just
they don't have any behind anything.
Just wrote, you know. Gave spiritual knowledge to the householders and just took
they exchange,
took whatever they were doing.
Yeah.
That's what they do, Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Jai.
Jai. Now. Hare Krishna.
Very bold, very bold.
Good boss, man. Oh, there. That off, yeah?